The sound of expensive cutlery scraping against fine china filled the dining room of my family's mansion as I pushed my food around my plate, trying to tune out my sister Olivia's latest speech about her corporate achievements. And then she announced, swirling her red wine, "The board unanimously approved my proposal for the Asian expansion. We're projecting a 30% increase in revenue by next quarter." I glanced at my parents, watching their faces glow with pride. Dad, CEO of Blake Industries, nodded approvingly while Mom reached over to squeeze Olivia's hand. This was our traditional Christmas dinner, a celebration of the family business and its rising star. "What about you, Sophie?" Mom turned to me, her smile fading slightly. "Still working on that. What do you call it?" "Nexus Technologies," I supplied, straightening in my chair. "And yes, we're actually—" "Her little startup," Olivia interrupted with a laugh. "What is it now? 2 years? And still working out of that tiny office downtown?" I bit my tongue, resisting the urge to correct her. The tiny office was just a front. What my family didn't know was that Nexus Technologies had quietly become one of the fastest-growing software companies in the country. We operated under various shell companies, our true ownership hidden behind layers of corporate structuring. "Someone has to try something new," I said carefully. "Not everyone wants to work for the family business." Dad set down his fork, his expression hardening. "The family business that put you through Stanford? That paid for your MBA? That same business you turned your back on?" "I didn't turn my back on anything," I replied. "I chose to build something of my own." "Build?" Olivia snorted. "Sophie, let's be honest. You're playing entrepreneur while the rest of us do real work. Blake Industries is a Fortune 500 company. We're about to launch the biggest expansion in our history. What have you built?" If they only knew. While they'd been focused on their traditional manufacturing business, I had developed an AI-driven supply chain management system that was revolutionizing the industry. Major corporations were already using our software, including several of Blake Industries' competitors. "I'm doing fine," I said simply, taking a sip of wine. "Fine isn't the Blake standard," Mom chimed in. "Look at Olivia, youngest VP in company history, featured in Forbes 30 Under 30. We just want you to live up to your potential, darling." I thought about the email I'd received that morning, an offer from a major tech company to acquire Nexus for $2.8 billion. I turned it down. My plans were much bigger than that. "Speaking of potential," Olivia continued, "the expansion project needs additional funding. Dad, have you considered approaching Morgan Stanley? Their tech division has been very aggressive lately." I hid my smile behind my wine glass. I knew exactly why Morgan Stanley was suddenly interested in manufacturing technology. They'd been trying to get a meeting with Nexus's mysterious CEO for months. "Actually," Dad replied, "we're exploring several options. The market's tighter than we expected, but Blake Industries' reputation speaks for itself." What they didn't know was that their reputation wasn't enough anymore. The manufacturing sector was changing rapidly, and companies that didn't adapt to new technology were being left behind. I'd seen their financials, not as the daughter they dismissed, but as the secret owner of a significant portion of their stock. "Have you considered private equity?" I asked innocently. "I hear Phoenix Capital is looking for manufacturing investments." Olivia rolled her eyes. "Please don't try to give business advice, Sophie. Phoenix Capital doesn't even take meetings with companies our size. They're way out of our league." I nodded thoughtfully, not mentioning that I'd had dinner with Phoenix Capital's CEO last week. Being underestimated had its advantages. "Well," Mom stood up, smoothing her expensive dress, Shall we move to the living room for dessert? Sophie, help me with the dishes. In the kitchen, Mom busied herself with coffee cups while I loaded the dishwasher, a task Olivia was apparently too important to handle. Honey, Mom said softly, I know you think you're proving something with this startup business, but it's time to be realistic. There's always a place for you at Blake Industries. I straightened up, meeting her eyes. I am being realistic, Mom. More realistic than you know. What's that supposed to mean? Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from my CFO. Asian investors confirmed. Ready to proceed with phase 2. I typed back quickly. Green light. Start buying tomorrow. Work? Mom asked disapprovingly. On Christmas? Something like that, I replied, pocketing my phone. The market never sleeps. Back in the living room, Olivia was holding court again, detailing her plans for Blake Industries' future. I settled into an armchair, half listening as she outlined initiatives I knew would never materialize. Their company was already in trouble, though they didn't realize it yet. By this time next year, she declared, we'll have offices in Singapore, Shanghai, and Seoul. The Blake name will be global. Assuming the funding comes through, I murmured. What was that? Dad asked sharply. Nothing, I smiled, just thinking out loud. Later that night, in my penthouse apartment, not the small downtown office my family thought I lived above, I reviewed the latest reports from my team. Nexus had already secretly acquired 43% of Blake Industries stock through various subsidiaries. Tomorrow's buying spree would put us over 51%. My phone lit up with another text, this time from my assistant. Board meeting scheduled for next week. All major shareholders will be present. Perfect, I replied. Time to introduce the real CEO of Nexus Technologies. I walked to my floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over the city lights. Somewhere out there, my family was probably still congratulating themselves on their business acumen, still pitying their failure of a daughter who couldn't cut it in the real corporate world. In 1 week, they would learn how wrong they'd been. In 1 week, they would discover that the daughter they dismissed had built something far bigger than they could imagine. In 1 week, everything would change. I poured myself a glass of the same expensive wine we'd had at dinner, but this time, I allowed myself to smile. Let them laugh. Let them mock my pathetic startup. Their reaction when they discovered the truth would be worth every condescending comment, every dismissive glance, every family dinner spent biting my tongue. After all, revenge is a dish best served with a controlling interest. The week after Christmas passed in a blur of stealth acquisitions and strategic meetings. From my real office, the entire top floor of a downtown skyscraper, I watched as Nexus Technologies systematically gained control of Blake Industries through carefully orchestrated stock purchases. We've crossed the threshold, my CFO, Michael, announced during our morning briefing. 51.3% ownership as of market close yesterday. Blake Industries is effectively ours. I nodded, studying the real-time stock ticker on my wall. Blake Industries' share price had been declining steadily, a fact my family seemed determined to ignore. Their outdated manufacturing processes and resistance to technological innovation had left them vulnerable. What's the status of their funding search? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Desperate, Michael smiled. Every major bank has turned them down. Morgan Stanley won't even take their calls anymore. They've scheduled an emergency board meeting for tomorrow. My phone buzzed, a text from Olivia. Family dinner tonight. Mandatory. Dad's orders. I smiled, knowing exactly why this dinner had been called. They needed to discuss the company's financial crisis, but they were too proud to do it anywhere but behind closed doors. Time to prepare for the final act, I told Michael. Make sure all our documentation is ready for tomorrow's board meeting. That evening, I arrived at my parents' mansion to find the atmosphere considerably different from Christmas dinner. Gone were the celebratory wines and smug speeches about expansion. Instead, tension hung heavy in the air as we gathered around the dining table. The situation, Dad began without preamble, is more challenging than we anticipated. Several key investors have expressed concerns about our technological infrastructure. Concerns? Olivia scoffed. They're being ridiculous. Our methods have worked for 40 years. I took a sip of water, watching them carefully. Maybe they're worried about competition from more innovative companies. Not you too, Olivia snapped. Just because you play with computers doesn't make you an expert on manufacturing. Actually, I set down my glass. I know quite a bit about modern manufacturing. For instance, did you know that automated supply chain management can reduce operational costs by up to 40%? That's exactly what we don't need, Dad interrupted. More tech talk. We need serious solutions. Like what? I asked innocently. Have you considered selling some shares to raise capital? Mom's fork clattered against her plate. Sell shares? This is a family company, is it? I pulled out my tablet, because according to public records, ownership has been shifting significantly over the past few months. Olivia leaned forward, her face flushing. What are you talking about? Various investment groups have been quietly acquiring Blake Industries stock. As of today, the Blake family only controls about 30% of the company. Dad stood up so quickly his chair toppled backward. That's impossible. I would know if someone was buying us out. Would you? I asked calmly. When was the last time you actually reviewed the shareholder registry? Or are you too busy dismissing technological innovation as unnecessary? How do you know all this? Olivia demanded. Because, I smiled, I've been watching very carefully. Tomorrow's board meeting should be quite interesting. You're not even on the board, Mom said dismissively. No, but Nexus Technologies' CEO is. As the majority shareholder, we're entitled to a seat. The silence that followed was deafening. 3 pairs of eyes stared at me as understanding slowly dawned. Nexus Technologies? Dad whispered. That's your little startup? Not so little anymore, I replied. We're valued at $4.2 billion as of last quarter. And yes, we now own 51.3% of Blake Industries. Olivia's face had gone completely white. You're lying. That's impossible. I pulled up another document on my tablet and slid it across the table. Here's the complete shareholding structure. You'll notice the various shell companies and subsidiaries all lead back to one parent organization, Nexus Technologies. Why? Mom's voice cracked. Why would you do this to your own family? I didn't do anything to you, I said quietly. I built something revolutionary while you were all too busy mocking me to notice. The fact that I now control the company you thought was too good for me. That's just poetic justice. Dad found his voice, anger replacing shock. You think you can just walk in and take over? We'll fight this. With what resources? I stood up, straightening my jacket. Your company is hemorrhaging money. Your technology is outdated. The only thing keeping your stock price from completely collapsing is the fact that I've been buying it. Get out, Olivia hissed. Get out of this house. I picked up my tablet and headed for the door, pausing only briefly. I'll see you all at tomorrow's board meeting. Oh, and Olivia? About that Asian expansion you were so proud of. It's canceled. We have better plans for the company. As I drove away from the mansion, my phone exploded with messages from family members. I ignored them all except one. From my grandmother, who had always seen my potential. Show them what you've built, dear. It's time they learned what real success looks like. In my office later that night, I reviewed the presentation for tomorrow's board meeting. The plan was comprehensive. A complete technological overhaul of Blake Industries, integration with Nexus's advanced systems, and a new management structure. Michael appeared in my doorway. The board members have been notified of the ownership change. Most of them are anxious to meet the real CEO of Nexus Technologies. I'm sure they are, I smiled. Make sure security is ready tomorrow. I have a feeling my family won't take their demotion quietly. As I looked out over the city lights, I thought about all the family dinners where they dismissed my dreams, all the condescending comments about my little startup. Tomorrow, they would learn the truth about the empire I'd built in silence. And this was just the beginning. The morning of the board meeting dawned clear and cold. I dressed with particular care. A custom-designed power suit that cost more than Olivia's entire wardrobe, though she'd never know it. Today wasn't just about taking control. It was about showing my family exactly who I'd become while they weren't watching. Blake Industries headquarters still bore my grandfather's original bronze plaque in the lobby. I ran my fingers across his name as I passed, wondering what he would think of today's events. He had been the true innovator in the family, before Dad turned the company into a monument to outdated thinking. Good morning, Ms. Blake. The security guard nodded respectfully. He'd clearly been briefed about the new ownership structure. The boardroom was already tense when I arrived. 14 board members sat around the massive mahogany table, with Dad at the head, at least for the next few minutes. Olivia sat at his right hand, her face tight with barely controlled rage. Mom had apparently decided to attend as well, though she had no official role. Now that everyone's here, Dad began, his voice strained. We need to discuss. Actually, I interrupted, taking a seat directly opposite him. As majority shareholder, I'll be conducting this meeting. Michael entered with our legal team, distributing documents to each board member. The room fell silent as they read the first page. This is outrageous, Olivia finally exploded. You can't just walk in here and... I can and I am. I cut her off smoothly. Nexus Technologies now owns 51.3% of Blake Industries. My first act as majority shareholder is to restructure the board. Dad, Olivia, you'll find your resignation letters in those packets. Please sign them. I built this company. Dad slammed his fist on the table. No, I corrected him. Grandfather built this company. You inherited it and refused to let it evolve. Now it's bleeding money and losing market share to more innovative competitors. I nodded to Michael, who started the presentation. Charts and graphs appeared on the room's screens, showing Blake Industries' declining performance against market trends. In the past 5 years, I continued, your profit margins have dropped 40%. Your technology is obsolete. 3 major clients have already jumped ship to competitors using modern supply chain management systems, specifically systems created by Nexus Technologies. The board members shifted uncomfortably. They'd known things were bad, but seeing the numbers laid bare was shocking. And you think you can fix this? Olivia sneered. With your computers and algorithms? I smiled, clicking to the next slide. We already have. Those same systems you've been mocking have revolutionized manufacturing logistics across the industry. Companies using our platform see an average 60% increase in efficiency, which is why our startup's value has surpassed Blake Industries by several $billion. Mom gasped audibly. Dad's face had turned an alarming shade of red. The choice is simple, I addressed the board. Sign the resignation letters and accept a generous severance package, or face a very public revelation about just how badly you've mismanaged this company. You would destroy your own family's reputation. Mom asked incredulously. You mean the family that never believed in me? That dismissed every achievement because it didn't fit your narrow definition of success. I stood up, commanding the room's attention. I'm not destroying anything. I'm saving this company from your outdated leadership. The board members were already signing the documents, eager to align themselves with the new power structure. They were business people, after all. They could see which way the wind was blowing. Dad stared at the resignation letter for a long moment before finally picking up his pen. I never thought my own daughter would betray me like this. Funny, I replied. I never thought my father would be too proud to see the future of his own industry. I guess we both had blind spots. As security arrived to escort them out, Olivia turned back for one last shot. You'll regret this. You have no idea how to run a real company. I laughed genuinely for the first time that day. My little startup is worth $4.2 billion. I've revolutionized an entire industry while you were playing corporate dress-up. I think I'll manage. After they left, I moved to the head of the table, my grandfather's old seat. Now, shall we discuss the real future of Blake Industries? The next few hours were a blur of strategic planning and reorganization. By the end of the day, Blake Industries had a new board, a new direction, and a new connection to the technological innovations that would save it. 1 week later, the business world was buzzing with the news. Techish Protevijiwi, REVAL Secret Empire. Next U.S. Technology CEO, Techi Skolentiorol, a FAMIOYBUSINES, Sophie Bielaki. The hidden Bilionair. I received exactly one message from my family, a handwritten note from my grandfather, who had been quietly watching from his retirement. You did what I always hoped someone would. You brought Blake Industries into the future. I'm proud of you, kid. The note now sits framed in my office, next to the original business plan for Nexus Technologies that my family had laughed at years ago. Every morning, I look at them both and remember that success doesn't always look like what others expect it to. 3 months later, Blake Industries stock had doubled. Our integrated technology platform was revolutionizing the manufacturing sector, just as I'd predicted. The board members who had so quickly switched allegiance were now falling over themselves to praise my vision. Dad and Olivia eventually tried to reconcile, of course, once the company's success became impossible to ignore. I received elaborate apologies, explanations about how they'd only wanted what was best for me, invitations to family dinners where they promised things would be different. I declined them all. Instead, I sent a simple response. The time for family dinners is past. If you'd like to schedule a meeting, please contact my office. We can discuss your future roles in the company, starting at entry level, of course. Everyone needs to learn the basics of modern manufacturing. They never replied. Now, 1 year later, I sometimes drive past our old family mansion, remembering all those dinners where they dismissed my little startup. The house seems smaller somehow, less imposing. Or maybe I'm just seeing it through new eyes, the eyes of someone who built something bigger than they could imagine. Last week, A young intern asked me why I'd kept my company secret for so long, why I'd let my family underestimate me until I could take control. Sometimes, I told her, being underestimated is the greatest advantage you can have. People show their true nature when they think you're beneath them, and success is sweetest when no one sees it coming. She nodded thoughtfully, then asked one more question. Was it worth it? Giving up your family for success. I looked out my office window at the city below, at the empire I'd built while they were too busy mocking me to notice. I didn't give up anything, I replied. They gave up on me long ago. I just proved them wrong in the most spectacular way possible. And that, really, was better than any family dinner could ever be. The day we buried my father was unseasonably cold for October. I stood at the edge of his grave, watching as mourners placed white roses on his casket, each flower a testament to the lives he touched during his 63 years. My sister Olivia clutched her husband's arm, her designer black dress and perfect makeup a stark contrast to my simple attire. Even at our father's funeral, she had to make a statement. He should have had a will, Olivia whispered to her husband, loud enough for me to hear. Now everything's going to be so complicated. I closed my eyes, trying to block out her voice. Trust Olivia to think about money while we were literally standing over Dad's grave. But she wasn't wrong. The lack of a will would make things messy. Dad's successful construction company, our childhood home, his investments, everything was now in limbo. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and until 3 weeks ago, I thought I understood my family. I was the quieter daughter, the one who chose to become a high school teacher instead of joining the family business. Olivia was the star, the one who went to business school and worked alongside Dad since she was old enough to read a contract. Sarah. My mother's voice pulled me from my thoughts. She stood beside me, elegant even in grief, her silver hair perfectly styled. Come with me for a moment, dear. We walked away from the crowd, past the rows of granite headstones until we reached a massive oak tree. Mom's hands trembled as she reached into her purse and pulled out a cream-colored envelope, sealed with wax in an old-fashioned way that was so characteristic of my father. Your father wanted you to have this, she whispered, pressing the envelope into my hands. Open it when you're alone. And Sarah, she hesitated, her eyes meeting mine. Whatever you read, remember that your father loved you. Before I could respond, she turned and walked back to the funeral, leaving me holding an envelope that felt heavier than paper should. I slipped it into my purse, my mind racing with questions. Why me? Why not Olivia? And why did Mom look so worried? The wake was held at our family home, a sprawling Victorian mansion that Dad had lovingly restored over the years. I watched as Olivia commanded attention in the living room, sharing stories about working with Dad, about how she was his right hand at the company. Our relatives nodded approvingly. Of course, Olivia would take over the business now. It was what everyone expected. Sarah, darling, my Aunt Margaret approached, martini in hand. I hope you're not too worried about all this. I'm sure Olivia will take care of you. I forced a smile, feeling the envelope burn in my purse. I'm fine, Aunt Margaret. I have my own life, my own career. Yes, teaching, she said with a slight grimace. Well, it's admirable work, dear. Though your father always hoped you join the family business. I excused myself and escaped to Dad's study, the one room in the house that still felt entirely his. The leather chair behind his massive oak desk still held the impression of his frame. His reading glasses lay on a stack of contracts, as if he just stepped out for a moment. The envelope felt heavy in my hands as I finally pulled it out. The wax seal bore Dad's signet ring impression, the family crest he'd had specially made when the business took off. With trembling fingers, I broke the seal and pulled out several pages of Dad's distinctive handwriting. "My dearest Sarah," the letter began, "if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and the time has come for you to know the truth about our family's legacy and why I've worked so hard to protect you from it." I continued reading, my hands shaking more with each paragraph. The words on the page couldn't be real. This had to be some kind of mistake. But as I read further, pieces of my childhood began falling into place. Strange conversations I'd overheard, mysterious business meetings, and why Dad had been so insistent that I stay away from the company. A knock at the study door made me jump. "Sarah?" Olivia's voice called out. "What are you doing in Dad's study? The lawyers are here to discuss the estate." I quickly folded the letter and slipped it back into my purse. "Coming," I called out, my voice surprisingly steady despite the chaos in my mind. As I walked back to the living room, where our family lawyer, Mr. Patterson, was setting up his briefcase, I felt the weight of Dad's words pressing down on me. The truth about the company, about what Olivia had done, about why Dad had never written a will. It was all there in black and white. "Now," Mr. Patterson began, adjusting his glasses, "since Mr. Mitchell died intestate, we'll need to follow state laws regarding the distribution of assets. The company being the primary asset." I tuned out his voice, watching Olivia's satisfied smile. She had no idea what was coming. None of them did. Dad's letter had changed everything, and soon, very soon, our entire family would learn the truth about Mitchell Construction and the real reason behind Dad's sudden death. The afternoon dragged on as Mr. Patterson detailed the complex process ahead of us. Olivia took notes on her iPad, occasionally shooting me condescending looks as if to say, "Don't worry, I'll handle everything," if she only knew what was in that letter. Later that evening, as guests finally began to leave, Mom caught my eye from across the room. The look we shared spoke volumes. She knew what was in the letter. She knew that everything was about to change. I gathered my things and headed for the door, but Olivia stopped me. "Sarah, we need to talk about the company. I know you've never been interested in the business side of things, but we should discuss your shares. I'm thinking of buying you out. For a fair price, of course." I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw what Dad had described in his letter. The ambition, the calculation, the absolute certainty that she deserved everything. "We'll talk soon, Olivia," I said quietly. "There's a lot to discuss." As I drove home that night, Dad's letter safely tucked in my purse, I couldn't stop thinking about his final words. "The truth will cost us everything, Sarah. But it's time for justice. You're the only one I trust to make it right." Tomorrow, I would start digging. Tomorrow, I would begin unraveling the carefully constructed lies that our family fortune was built on. But tonight, I would mourn my father, not just his death, but the weight he carried all these years, protecting me while watching his beloved company become something he never intended. The truth would indeed tear our family apart, but as Dad wrote, sometimes destruction is necessary for redemption. The morning after the funeral, I spread Dad's letter across my kitchen table, along with years of newspaper clippings I'd gathered overnight. The Mitchell Construction story was one of local legend. How my father built an empire from nothing, transforming a small contracting business into one of the largest development companies in the state. But Dad's letter told a different story. The company's success, he wrote, came at a price I never intended to pay. When the accident happened at the Riverside project in 2018, I thought it was just that, an accident. But what I discovered in Olivia's files changed everything. I pulled up the news articles about the Riverside project on my laptop. 3 workers had died when a support beam collapsed during construction of a luxury apartment complex. The official investigation ruled it an equipment failure. Mitchell Construction paid the families handsomely, and the story faded from headlines. But according to Dad's letter, Olivia had known about the structural issues weeks before the collapse. She had received multiple reports warning about substandard materials. But instead of halting construction, she buried the reports and pressured inspectors to sign off on the project. The evidence is in my private safe, Dad's letter continued. The combination is your birthday. I knew Olivia would never think to try that. Inside, you'll find everything: the original reports, emails, and proof of the bribes. I spent the last 5 years trying to make it right without destroying our family's name. But after what I discovered last month about the new downtown development project, I can't stay silent anymore. My hands shook as I read the final paragraphs. Dad had confronted Olivia just days before his heart attack. The timing couldn't be coincidental. My phone buzzed, a text from Olivia. Meeting with lawyers at 2 p.m. Don't be late like always. I stared at her message, remembering all the times she belittled me, dismissed me as the family failure, the sister who chose teaching over real success. If she only knew what Dad had entrusted me with. At 1:55 p.m., I walked into the Mitchell Construction headquarters. The 20-story building gleamed with success, our family name emblazoned across the lobby in gold letters. Employees nodded respectfully. They all knew the boss's daughters. The conference room was already full. Olivia sat at the head of the table in Dad's old seat. Mom sat quietly beside her, while various lawyers and executives filled the remaining chairs. Sarah, how nice of you to join us, Olivia said, her tone dripping with condescension. We've already begun discussing the transition plan. I took my seat, noting how everyone deferred to Olivia. She had spent years cultivating this image of herself as Dad's natural successor. As I was saying, she continued, the board has expressed full confidence in my leadership. Given Sarah's alternative career choices, we feel a clean transition would be best. We're prepared to offer a very generous buyout package. The family lawyer, Mr. Patterson, slid a document across the table. We valued your shares at $5 million, Sarah. Very generous, considering your lack of involvement in the company. I picked up the paper, pretending to read it while my mind raced. They had no idea about the safe, about what Dad had discovered, about what I now knew. Actually, I said quietly, I don't think I'll be selling my shares. The room fell silent. Olivia's perfect smile flickered for just a moment. Don't be difficult, Sarah, she said. You've never shown any interest in construction. What could you possibly want with shares in a company you don't understand? I met her gaze steadily. I understand more than you think, Olivia. In fact, I'd like to schedule a full board meeting for next week. There are some matters Dad wanted discussed. What matters? Olivia's voice had lost its smoothness. The Riverside project, for one, I said softly. And maybe we should talk about those irregularities Dad found in the downtown development plans. The color drained from Olivia's face. Mom gasped quietly. The lawyers exchanged confused glances. I don't know what you're talking about, Olivia said, but her hands were shaking as she shuffled her papers. I think you do, and I think it's time the board knew everything about the reports you buried, the inspectors you bribed, and exactly what happened the day Dad died. Olivia stood up so quickly her chair toppled backward. This meeting is over. Everyone out, except my sister. As the room cleared, I could feel the tension building. Mom was the last to leave, her eyes filled with tears as she looked between her daughters. When we were alone, Olivia's mask cracked completely. "Where did you get this information?" "Dad left me a letter," I said, standing to face her. "And a safe full of evidence. Did you really think he didn't know? About Riverside? About everything?" "You're bluffing," she snarled. "Dad would never." "The safe combination is my birthday." I cut her off. "When was the last time you remembered my birthday, Olivia? When was the last time you thought about anyone but yourself?" She moved faster than I expected, grabbing my arm. "Listen to me very carefully, little sister. You have no idea what you're getting into. Take the money and walk away. This is your only warning." I pulled free from her grip. "No, Olivia. You listen. Next week, I'm going to open that safe, and everything you've built on lies is going to come crashing down." I walked out of the conference room, my heart pounding but my steps steady. In my purse, my phone was already recording, capturing every word of Olivia's threat. Dad had taught me well. Always keep evidence. That night, as I sat in my apartment reviewing more of Dad's documents, my phone rang. An unlisted number. "Ms. Mitchell?" a man's voice asked. "My name is James Torres. I was the site supervisor at Riverside before your sister fired me. I heard about your father's death. And there's something you need to know." I grabbed a pen, my hand trembling slightly. "I'm listening, Mr. Torres." "The day before your father died, he came to see me. He said he was gathering evidence, that he was going to make things right. He asked me to testify if it came to that." I closed my eyes, fighting back tears. "And would you? Would you testify?" There was a long pause. "Yes, your father was a good man. What happened to him, it wasn't right." After I hung up, I sat in the darkness of my apartment, thinking about the path ahead. Dad's letter had unleashed a storm that would destroy everything: our family's reputation, the company he'd built, perhaps even our freedom. But as I looked at the photo of him on my desk, his kind eyes smiling at me, I knew I had to finish what he'd started. 3 families had lost loved ones at Riverside. How many more lives would be lost if Olivia's corruption continued? Tomorrow, I would visit the safe. Tomorrow, I would begin gathering allies. And soon, very soon, the truth about Mitchell Construction would finally come to light. The downtown offices were nearly empty when I arrived at 6 a.m. Only the cleaning staff and a few early bird employees roamed the halls. I took the executive elevator to Dad's private office on the top floor, my heart pounding with each ascending floor. The office remained untouched since his death. Family photos lined the walls, mostly of Olivia at company events, receiving awards, standing proudly beside Dad at groundbreaking ceremonies. Only one small frame held my college graduation photo, tucked away in a corner. The safe was hidden behind a large oil painting of the company's first building project. My hands trembled as I entered my birthday. 0 to 31 to 58 to 9. The mechanism clicked, and the heavy door swung open. Inside, organized with Dad's characteristic precision, lay folders upon folders of evidence, each one carefully labeled, dated, and annotated. But what caught my eye was a USB drive taped to the inside of the door with a note: "Security footage, my office, September 15th, 3 days before his death." I pulled out my laptop and plugged in the drive. The video showed Dad's office, this very room, from the security camera in the corner. Dad sat at his desk, Looking tired, but determined, Olivia stormed in, her face twisted with anger. The audio was crystal clear. "You can't do this." Olivia's voice crackled through my laptop speakers. "I built this company into what it is today." "You built it on lies," Dad replied calmly. "On corruption and bribes. Those families from Riverside deserve justice." "Justice?" Olivia laughed bitterly. "Where was your sense of justice when we were struggling? When we needed those first big contracts? You didn't care about cutting corners then." "I was wrong." Dad's voice was heavy with regret. "But this ends now. Tomorrow, I'm going to the board with everything." Olivia's next words chilled me to the bone. "No, you won't. You're going to take your heart medication and go home. And if you ever threaten this company again, remember, accidents happen in construction all the time." The video ended. I sat in Dad's chair, tears streaming down my face. It wasn't just corruption anymore. This was murder. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Parking garage. Level B2. 10 minutes. Come alone." Everything in me screamed that this was a trap, but I had to know. I copied the USB drive, slipped one copy into my purse, and hid the other in a place Olivia would never look, inside the frame of my graduation photo. The parking garage was dimly lit and eerily quiet. A figure emerged from behind a concrete pillar. "Mom, I've been watching the security feeds," she said quietly. "I knew you'd come to the safe eventually." "Did you know?" I asked, my voice breaking. "About Olivia? About what she did to Dad?" Mom's face crumpled. "I suspected. The night before he died, your father changed his heart medication. He said if anything happened to him, I should give you that letter. He knew Sarah. He knew what she was capable of." Before I could respond, elevator doors dinged. Olivia's voice echoed through the garage. "Well, isn't this cozy?" A secret mother-daughter chat. She wasn't alone. 2 large men in suits flanked her, their intentions clear in their stance. "I warned you to take the money," Olivia said, stepping closer. "Now you forced my hand." "Like you forced Dad's hand," I shot back. "What did you do, Olivia? Switch his medication? Make it look like a heart attack?" Her smile was cold. "Prove it." "Oh, I can," I replied, matching her tone. "The evidence is already with the FBI. Dad's files, the video from your confrontation, everything. Did you really think I'd come here without insurance?" The color drained from Olivia's face. "You're bluffing." "Am I? Check your phone." On cue, her phone buzzed. Mine too. Breaking news alerts flashed across our screens. METCGEL construction under federal investigation. FBI raise ARTES. "You didn't," Olivia whispered. "I did. An hour ago, I met with federal agents. They're upstairs right now, seizing every computer, every file. It's over, Olivia." The sound of sirens filled the garage. Olivia's hired muscle melted away into the shadows. She turned to run, but Mom's voice stopped her. "Enough. My husband is dead because of you. 3 families lost their loved ones because of your greed. Face what you've done, Olivia." Federal agents swarmed the garage, led by Agent Sarah Torres, James Torres's daughter. Poetic justice, I thought, watching them handcuff my sister. "Sarah Mitchell?" Agent Torres approached me. "We found additional evidence in the office. Your father, he left a recorded confession about everything. He was building a case against the company, against your sister. He was trying to make it right." I nodded, tears flowing freely now. That's all he ever wanted, to make things right. The next few weeks passed in a blur of headlines. Mitsubishi L Construction CEO, RRESTE, FORFFRAUD, and MURDR, RIVERSIDE, KIRAGDU. The two Ruishidi revealed. Mitsubishi L Family Empire crumbles, ANISVADAL. The company was dissolved, its assets seized. The families of the Riverside victims finally received justice and the truth about what happened to their loved ones. Mom and I moved away from the city, away from the whispers and pointed fingers. We bought a small house near my school, where I continued teaching. Sometimes, healing comes in the simplest forms. A year later, I visited Dad's grave alone. The family name had been tarnished, our fortune lost, but something more valuable had been saved: the truth. I placed a single rose on his headstone and whispered, "I did it, Dad. I made it right." As I walked away, I thought about that letter that had started everything. Dad knew that giving me that letter would destroy the company he built, tear apart our family, and expose decades of secrets. But he also knew that sometimes the cost of truth is worth paying. The Mitchell name no longer stood for power and success. Instead, it became a cautionary tale about greed, corruption, and the price of silence. But for me, it was simply the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. In my classroom, I teach my students about integrity, about standing up for what's right even when it costs you everything. I tell them that true legacy isn't measured in dollars or buildings, but in the choices we make and the truths we're willing to face. Olivia sits in prison now, serving a life sentence for Dad's murder and the Riverside deaths. Mom visits her sometimes. I don't. Some betrayals can never be forgiven. The last time I saw her, during the trial, she asked me why. Why Dad had trusted me with everything instead of her. Because, I told her, he knew I would choose justice over power. Something you never understood. Now, years later, when people ask about the Mitchell construction scandal, I tell them the real story. Not about the money or the corruption, but about a father's final act of courage, entrusting his quiet daughter with the truth that would both destroy and redeem his legacy. Sometimes the most devastating secrets come in simple cream-colored envelopes, sealed with wax and love. And sometimes the strength to face those secrets comes from the most unexpected places, like a teacher who chose truth over fortune, justice over power, and peace over empire.